Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Ajoe21love, here bringing you episode number 29 of Sports Overview Topics. It's good to be back after a very good sports weekend. We're at the end of the 2020 NFL regular season and into the playoffs. It was a good week 17. We also found out who's going to be in the college football playoff national championship. We had some bowl games. The second week of the NBA season. We'll go over all that and a little bit more. So thank you for joining me. If you're new, like and subscribe for all your reviews, predictions, at all, whether it be my sports content or my pro wrestling reviews. You get all that and more. The other day, obviously, my AEW Dynamite review, you can click on that. But enough of that. Let's get into sports content for today. So, the other day, we found out, like I said, and you can tell in the podcast or the thumbnails, spoiler alert, that it'll be Alabama Crimson Tide and Ohio State Buckeyes in the college football playoff national championship. So we knew that we all had a feeling that Alabama was going to roll over Notre Dame. Pretty explanatory, which only will raise the question as to why Texas A&M. Now, Texas A&M did lose soundly to Alabama early in the season, so I get the aspect. And, Notre Dame, yes, it was without Trevor Lawrence, but they still beat Clemson. But still, they got trounced in the ACC championship. Now they get trounced by Alabama here. It just raises the question, and I believe that in due time, the college football playoff will be expanded, at least to 8 teams. That's just one aspect of it. Now, the other aspect, Alabama won. Now, the other side of the coin, and what was a stunning blowout per se, the Ohio State Buckeyes ran away from the Clemson Tigers, and wow, was that very interesting. I mean, so it was a very good game to start. It was 14-14. Now, a lot of drama and a bunch of, poking the bear, if you will, of Dabo Swinney jabbing at Ohio State, calling them the 11th ranked team in the country. They didn't play as much, etc., etc. I mean, the reality is Ohio State didn't play as many games as these other teams that made the playoffs. Simple. And when you look at other teams that did not make the playoffs, such as Oklahoma and Texas A&M and Florida, many of these teams played more games than Ohio State and did not make the playoffs. So there's that aspect. And also, going into it, Ohio State did not look, and particularly Justin Fields has not looked well prior to the game against Clemson in his prior few outings against Indiana and against Northwestern. And if it wasn't for Trey Sermon putting the team on his back against Northwestern, maybe Northwestern or Oklahoma or etc., another team gets in. But Trey Sermon put the Buckeyes on his back in the Big Ten championship against Northwestern, and they won that game. And this game was similar as far as his performance, but also the complementary of Justin Fields, his performance in 6 touchdowns. Now, it was 14-14. It was almost a stalemate as of sorts. And then 2 touchdowns later, then you start playing in the fact like, okay, Nolan Turner, because of his hit on Ian Book in the ACC championship game, was not available for the first half. So there was that aspect. And then Kolsky, his hit on Justin Fields, it ejected him. So already you're without 2 of your defensive captains, out the first half, and you could see it was affecting Clemson's defense. Blown coverages. Blown coverages in Clemson secondary, and it was just easy pickings for Justin Fields and Chris Olave and that Buckeyes offense. They were just rolling. And, the second half, because Justin Fields, he was in and out. Injury, you could tell he wasn't 100%. And doing so, he was still on point in the second half, but yeah, he was a little off. And Nolan Turner, he was able to come back in the second half, and Clemson and Trevor Lawrence, they got a touchdown to get in striking distance, but the flaws in that defense it was too late for Clemson. And again, the Ohio State had their way. I think another parameter that comes into play that makes this even more shocking, that I bet some fans of Ohio State, or some fans in particular, won't put into play as to why some did not take Ohio State as seriously as they probably should have, was the losses on defense. When you compare this Buckeyes defense to last year's, the losses of Chase Young, who's now with the Washington football team in the NFL, Jordan Fuller, Damon Arnett, Jeff Okudah. These are big losses on the defense, but the defense held it together and really corralled. And as time went on in the game, Clemson's offense was just overwhelmed, and it was a great performance by their defense, and they really showed that they deserve to be in the college football playoff, even though the criticisms were there. They proved, including me, that they deserve their crack at Clemson, and they showed it there. Now, as far as Alabama versus Ohio State is concerned, I mean, first of all, I know there was a 6-touchdown performance, but when you look back, you can tell that defense of Clemson let up a lot of easy plays to Justin Fields and the Ohio State offense. And I don't think that Ohio State will get that much of an easy pickings against a Crimson Tide Nick Saban defense, and they will be buttoned up and they will be disciplined. I'm not saying that Ohio State won't score their points. I'm saying that it will be much more difficult and they won't be out of sorts as Clemson's defense was for most of that game. And also, when you look at the offense of Clemson that won that national championship 2 years ago, T. Higgins, and that other receiver that comes in my mind that had surgery at the beginning of this year, so he was taken out. But they still have Amari Rodgers. And also, when you look at that team that won the championship, they had Christian Wilkins, they had Dexter Lawrence, two guys that know how to beef up the middle of the D-line and disrupt an offense. In this case, they didn't have those. And with the Crimson Tide, Mac Jones, Devontae Smith, three Heisman favorites, even though Najee Harris wasn't a finalist. You got that trio, and then Jalen Waddle, who could be back. We'll have to see about his stats, but that's another factor. Also, on their defense, they got two really good stars that could be in the NFL draft. Patrick Surtain, arguably the number one corner in next year's draft, or this year's draft. Also got Dylan Moses, a linebacker. You got some good stars all across the board, so should be fun. And I'm going to give the edge still to Alabama. Excuse me, but Ohio State, they can sneak up on them. But this really definitely raised an eyebrow for Alabama. And, we'll see on January 11th. Next up, want to give a little bit of light to the second week of the NBA season. So Steph Curry is back. Steph Curry, last night the other day scored 62 points. There were critics and head scratchers as to start the season with the way it went on with Brooklyn and then against Milwaukee. but Steph Curry is still here. And the Knicks have been surprising, off to a 4-3 start, like I said last week. They had that win over Milwaukee, which was stunning. They're off to a good start. The Atlanta Hawks, they're a team to watch out for at 4-3. The probably most disappointing team so far to start the season are the Denver Nuggets. They have been off to a slow start. They got a win the other night against Minnesota. But, I mean, Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, we know they're two big stars, but, well, that whole team is pretty slow and sluggish to start. And overall, those teams, the Bulls are coming back. They're slow, but we'll see. So there's my little 2 cents as far as the NBA season week 2 and who to watch out for. Also, Luka Doncic has a quad contusion and it's day to day, so we'll have to see. He wasn't active for last night against the Bulls, but we'll see because they need him. He's a big star. Although Josh Richardson has so far been a viable front runner for Rookie of the Year in the NBA. So we'll see about that, but keep your eye out on Luka and the Mavericks, of course. So now we're at the end of the NFL season, regular season. Now it's playoff time, but first, gotta go over the final week of the NFL season, regular season, and it was a really good week as far as picks are concerned. 13-3, best record since the start of the season. But overall, the final week, really weird to pick because you don't know who's going to rest, you don't know who's going to play, and which teams have something to play for, which teams might want an extra or a better draft pick, but still, really good week, and some weird scenarios happened in week 17, but now let's go over them. So, all the games happened on Sunday, and so starting off, the Colts defeated the Jaguars 28-14. Now, it started it started like the Colts were going to run away with it, but the Jaguars kind of found their way back into it in striking distance. But Jonathan Taylor, 253 yards rushing. Man. I mean, they play the Bills in the first playoff game of Wildcard weekend on Saturday morning. And Philip Rivers, it was strange for him in this game, but if their run game can keep rolling, then they have chance to, because that's probably their only chance to stop the red-hot Buffalo Bills. And then in the morning, we had the Buccaneers, who could clinch the 5 seed in the NFC and did so with a 44-27 win over the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons made it interesting down the stretch, but Tom Brady, man, 40 touchdowns this season at 43, and I mean, the talent is there at his weaponry. Yeah, Mike Evans, he did go out with a hyperextended knee. Still possible that he can play Saturday night against Washington, but we'll see how things go. But Antonio Brown, his best game as a Buck, 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards receiving. I mean, one more could say there's a reason why they picked him up, and this is why, because in case of an injury, Antonio Brown picks up the slack. Chris Godwin had a really good game as well. So, they keep it rolling. The Giants, and then the Cowboys' hopes to win the division 23-19. The Giants, their defense, like I said, is legit, as I've mentioned many times during the season. Their defense is legit. Leonard Williams, his best season so far, 11.5 sacks on the year. I mean, won't really show in the win column, but Joe Judge, a successful season and first season as the New York Giants head coach, and they controlled the game throughout. It was a Xavier McKinney interception, which kind of sealed it, and they were on scoreboard watch Sunday night to watch Washington and Philly. But hats off to the Giants. Was a really good season. Daniel Jones, they lost Saquon Barkley in week 2 against the Bears. But Daniel Jones, when he doesn't turn the ball over, when he is careful with the ball, he can really do some good things. And with another year under his belt, perhaps in third year, he can cut down more on those turnovers and really have a better year next year. Then we had the Patriots win 28-14, close out the season on a good note. The Jets, we know they were coming in on a hot streak, 2 wins in a row over the over the Rams and the Browns. And the Patriots, I was curious who they were going to start at quarterback. They started Cam. I know it's against Jets, but so they did some good things. Can run the ball well. David Nasiasi caught a touchdown. One of our tight ends that we drafted Don King and David Nasiasi in the mid rounds, and neither one of them really did anything until Sunday. But oh well. I mean, as odd as a season it was, 7-9 we end up. So, all in all, good for Jets. Sam Darnold, I think they could very well keep him at the second overall pick, and perhaps they trade down for someone that wants a quarterback, whether it's the 49ers or the Panthers, and they get more pieces around that team, because that team has flaws, and a quarterback, Trevor Lawrence could solve a world of hurt or flaws of a team and a roster. But Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, maybe, but I don't see it. Then the Vikings beat the Lions 37-35. It was a good game, but at the same time, it just shows you the lack of defense that these two teams have had all year. And as I've said many times, that my dad, who's a Vikings fan, will say so as well. The Vikings' inexperienced defense was a liability most of the season. And, as we gear towards the offseason, perhaps they can, get Danielle Hunter back, perhaps draft another pass rusher, whether it's Quit Pay, Micah Parsons. I don't think their draft pick is that high, but maybe they can get one of those guys. Pair up with Hunter when he gets back. The secondary has a year under its belt, and we'll see next year. But their primary objective needs to be defense. I mean, that offense was statistically a top 5 offense. Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook with a average offensive line. And, maybe they trade Kyle Rudolph. We'll see. But they got work to do as well in the offseason. Then the Browns, 18 years of being out of the playoffs. 18 years. Have not played since following the 2002 season, that Iron City Bowl Classic against the Steelers in 2003. They got it done. The Browns 24-22. They got it done. The Steelers were without. They rested Big Ben. They rested Cam Hayward. They rested T.J. Watt. Joe Hayden was out with an injury, but at the same time, the Browns were hindered by COVID as well. They were without some stars in their secondary. Someone acknowledge it, but oh well. But hats off to Browns and the Dog Pound and the fan base. They deserve it. Just 3 years ago, they've hadn't won a game. 3 years ago, they finished 0-16. And then Baker Mayfield has come in, along with Nick Chubb, along with Kareem Hunt, and that offensive line. And really, they have turned the corner, and it's not Arizona, but the Browns have risen back to prosperity and are relevant again in the NFL. These are the new Browns. And hats off to Kevin Stefanski as well. My pick for Coach of the Year. And past Paul Brown. The legendary, the late, great Paul Brown. For most wins as the Browns head coach in their first season. Hats off to him. Hats off to the Baltimore Ravens running game, not so much the Bengals defense. The Ravens won 38-3 over the Cincinnati Bengals. 404 yards rushing for the Ravens. The Ravens didn't do anything fancy. They just ran the ball. And did what they wanted to do against the Bengals. Now, the Bengals, they have a talented secondary. They have Sam Hubbard. They have some piece on defense, but really, 404 yards rushing. Next year, with a high draft pick and Joe Burrow getting back, is going to be the real test. But just a sour taste to end the season if you're a Bengals fan. Yeah. The Ravens, after that loss to Tennessee, won 5 straight, and they are clinched in the playoffs when they like to be reeling coming into or in the middle of the season, but they fought their way back. And now credit, when you look at some of the defenses they have faced along the stretch, the Browns defense is so-and-so. The Jaguars and the Bengals. Those defenses, but you can't control who you play on the schedule. They got it done, and they're in the playoffs. So, hats off to the Ravens. Then we had. Sorry, I'm confused because they changed most of the games around, or they flexed most of the games around. So, I'm trying to go in order the best I can for the time, but it's kind of confusing. So the Titans, it wasn't pretty, but they won the AFC South and they beat the Texans 41-38. What a game. Derrick Henry, over 200 yards rushing, and pass or went over 2,000 yards rushing on the season. It looked to may have gone in overtime, but a long throw by Ryan Tannehill and a doinked field goal that went in by Samuel Sloman, because Stephen Gostkowski was out because of COVID. One hit for the Titans, and the Titans, much like the Ravens, whoever wins, this is basically the battle of teams you do not want to face in the playoffs. The Titans and the Ravens, because both can be physical, both can run on you. We'll see. It should be a fun matchup Sunday morning, but yeah, hats off to Titans, although it didn't look pretty. Deshaun Watson had probably his best season. Sadly, they're losing. They lost double-digit games. J.J. Watt even apologized to Deshaun Watson after. Said, "We wasted one of your great years." And that's just how it goes sometimes in the NFL. But they definitely need to fix things in the offseason, because unfortunately they don't have a first or second rounder because of Bill O'Brien trading those picks to Miami. And they got work to do. So because of that, the Titans win, meaning the Colts would have to go on a wildcard berth if the Miami Dolphins lost, and so they did. The Bills, I thought, because there's no number 2 bye in the playoffs, I thought maybe they rest their starters. That was not the case. When you look at how things went, they could have, because the Browns beat the Steelers, but nonetheless, the Bills roared over the Dolphins 56-26. Dolphins didn't have Fitz because of COVID. It's just sad if you're a Miami Dolphins fan. You win 10 straight, or you win 10 games. Was a good season, but unfortunately, we'll be on the outside looking in. And, the Bills, they've just been roaring. 6 straight, or it might be 7 straight, I'm not sure, but they've just been roaring since their bye. And man, I feel bad for the Colts because they have to face them Saturday morning in the playoffs in Buffalo, with Bills Mafia being there, 6,700 fans in attendance. So, oh geez. Then we had the Seahawks beat the 49ers 26-23. Seahawks, their defense has gotten better. It was kind of a tricky situation if you're a Seahawks fan, because you had a chance of the first round bye, but you needed Green Bay and New Orleans to lose. So it was kind of tricky. But at the same time, the Saints need the Seahawks to lose. But at the same time, also the Packers to lose. So it's kind of a tricky situation for all three teams. Although it was simple for the Packers, win and get the bye. But Seahawks, they won. Although it was dicey, 26-23. They did what they needed to do. The Rams and what was the battle of the backup quarterbacks, because Kyler Murray was in and out. John Wolford and the Rams won 18-7, and they clinched their playoff berth, knocked the Cardinals out of the playoffs. The Cardinals 6-3. They had a good season and looked like they were on the verge of perhaps winning the division. But inconsistency down the stretch led to their downfall, and they should not have been in this situation, but they were. So when I look at the first 2 years of considering how they were before Cliff and Kyle were there, so far it's been a success. Now, it's just about next year. They need to be in the playoffs, point blank. Otherwise, you become a little wary of their situation. Next, the Raiders won 32-31 over the Broncos after a final play. Oh, excuse me one sec. Sorry about that. So, the Raiders won on the last second. This was an entertaining game down the stretch. The Raiders won 32-31 over the Broncos on a last-ditch play, 2-point conversion. The Raiders, like the Cardinals, they were inconsistent down the stretch, but the Raiders, 2 straight years, they were 6-4 last year, 6-3 this year, and did not make the playoffs. It's now whether Raider fans like it or not, they're stuck with John Gruden as their coach for the next 7 years. So it just is what it is. But they got to fix their defense. Because they have the offensive personnel like the Cardinals, but their defense has been a liability as well. And if they can get another pass rusher to complement Crosby, and they can get some help in the secondary, then I think they'll be really close to being a complete team because their offense is there and it's legit. The Saints beat up in big fashion. They handled their business against the Panthers 33-7. Drew Brees did well. They were without their running back room. Ty Montgomery was a running back, and a practice squad member was their backup. But Drew Brees handled it. Their defense handled it. Teddy Bridgewater, he threw 2 picks. P.J. Walker came in, threw a pick as well. So it was just about the Saints handling their business, and they are the 2 seed in the NFC this year. Why I say 2 seed? Well, when you think of what happened, well, Green Bay beat the Bears in Chicago 35-16. Now, it was very close when you think about it. It was 21-16, and the Bears elect to go for it instead of kicking a field goal when there's 12 minutes left and they don't make it. Instead of making it a 2-point game, you leave it with, or you give it back to Rodgers, who eventually you knew was going to spark it up again. And they scored 2 more touchdowns, and there was that. They won 35-16. Mitchell Trubisky did well, but no touchdowns. And that pick, I mean, they made the playoffs, so I think it will save their coach and their GM, but I'm kind of curious, though, because, they were 5-1. They lost 6 straight. Then they roared back, or they came back to make the playoffs at 8-8. Hats off to them. It's just weird because it's okay. It's like a roller coaster with the Bears, basically. Justin Herbert as, a fly, but Justin Herbert and the Chargers won over the backup Chiefs 38-21. Chiefs were without Mahomes and Hill. It's kind of silly that people still wanted to pick the Chiefs. It was silly, but Chargers handled their business. 7-9. They are a sleeper team to watch next year. As far as playoffs go, and yeah, hats off to Justin Herbert. 31 touchdown passes for a rookie. 31 for Justin Herbert. Now, I don't think Joe Burrow probably would have thrown that much, but it would have certainly been interesting to watch what would have happened if Joe Burrow didn't get injured against Washington early in the year, but who knows? Tua, I mean, he's not He's definitely looked like the third best quarterback of that trio, behind Burrow and Herbert. So we'll see. I think that was all of the games of the early window. Yeah, so now the night game, Sunday Night Football. So we saw that Giants beat Dallas. So they were scoreboard watching to watch this game. And also, of course, the Buccaneers, because they clinched the 5 seed, and watching this game to determine whether they face the Washington or the Giants. And Washington won 20-14, but I'm with you, Giants fans. I was confused. I mean, it was 17-14 in the third quarter. And weird situations, weird decisions by Doug Peterson. First of all, they had a chance to tie it at 17-all, but they elect to go for it, and they don't make it. Instead of tying it up 17-17. And then at the end of the third quarter, early fourth quarter, they take Jalen Hurts out and they put Nate Sudfeld in. And you can tell just by the reactions of Jalen Hurts and the team of the Philadelphia Eagles, like, what is going on? And many of the Giants fans and former players, Eli Manning, Saquon Barkley, just Giants faithful, all confused on what's going on. And it just, Washington won, congrats to them. They win the division, but just confusing to see. If you're an Eagles fan, they moved from 9 pick to 6. Jalen Hurts, yes, have a good throwing day, but he ran for 2 touchdowns. I mean, it's just a mind-boggling situation as to how it all unfolded, and I don't get it. It's just a bizarre way to lasting image to end the 2020 NFL regular season. I don't get it. I mean, like Herm Edwards says, you play to win the game. And Jason Kelce, their center, was asked about tanking, I believe, last week or a couple weeks ago in an interview, and he talked about how it doesn't matter who you're trying to scout, who you're trying to get. The objective is to always win the game, and that is not what. No one can convince me, or probably a Giants fan, that Doug Peterson and what he said that they were all trying to win the game. It just didn't make sense, and just has me scratching my head. But, hats off to Washington. Alex Smith, Ron Rivera, you know the story. Alex Smith with his leg, Ron Rivera being cancer, The story, you feel good for them. It's just a weird way how it unfolded. And Giants fans, Giants, I was high on you in the offseason. Now I will say that Giants have won more games and now I've been in this situation. Still, I'm glad for Giants, although the upside is instead of winning the division, you get a top 10 pick, so it's not that bad, but still it's confusing. But it is what it is. So with that, it sets up the Wildcard weekend for this week, Saturday and Sunday. So now I'll be going over my Wildcard predictions for this week. Again, so we have 6 games going on this weekend. 3 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday. So, kicking off with Saturday's games. So, Colts, number 7 seed, going to Buffalo. Now, Colts, we know they're loaded on that offensive line. Philip Rivers, arguably having his best year. They have a solid 1-2 punch at running back with Jonathan Taylor, Naeem Hines. T.Y. Hilton has been good down the stretch. Their defense is pretty good at times. Question will be is, can Philip Rivers do what he needs to do to topple the red-hot Buffalo Bills? The Bills, we know they've been on a hot streak. Josh Allen is a candidate for MVP. Stephon Diggs, that trade, besides the DeAndre Hopkins trade, that trade might have been the biggest trade of the offseason. The trade of Diggs from Minnesota to Buffalo. And their defense is stout. If there's one Achilles heel of the Bills' defense, it's their run defense, which is a way that the Colts can beat them. But ultimately, this comes down to Josh Allen versus Philip Rivers, and I gotta go with Josh Allen over Philip Rivers. It's sad because this could be Philip Rivers, you hear things, it could be Philip Rivers' last game, and it's been a good season for the Colts, but I just see the Bills winning 38-27. Now, divisional game, interesting game. The Seahawks hosting the Rams. Seahawks Part 3, the rubber match this year. Part 1 went to the Rams. Part 2 went to Seattle. Part 3 in Seattle. So, well, what is the health status of Jared Goff? I mean, we know the talent on the defensive side of the Rams. It's just about can they get enough slack from their offense. And ultimately, even if Jared Goff is healthy somehow, I still take a 100% Russell Wilson and the way their defense has been playing as of late over Jared Goff and the Rams. So I'm going with Seahawks to win the rubber match, the trilogy, 24-17 in Seattle. Then Saturday night, interesting. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, first time in 13 years they have been in the playoffs. Going to Washington to play the football team. Now, Chase Young has called out Tom Brady. He says he wants Tom Brady, wants to sack Tom Brady. That will be an interesting dynamic. Washington, their defense has the ability to keep anyone at bay. They probably have the best front seven in football. Chase Young, Ryan Kerrigan, Jonathan